Hello team, welcome to my session on Coffee with Prabh, and today we're going to discuss about some of the topics of domain 5 build based on the question. So what I did here is I found some technical topics of domain 5 where the people struggle, and based on that I come with the questions. And do let me know how do you find this video in last, and based on the feedback I will make more videos like that. My name is Prabh Nair. For more information you can check my LinkedIn profile, and without wasting a time, let's start with the first part. Thank you. So let's start with the first coffee shot. During an information security planning review of industrial control system environment, IS auditor must identify the primary safeguard that should be addressed before any other security measures are designed. Which of the following should receive the top priority? Now, what is ICS here? Because first we need to understand what is ICS. It's part of domain 5. Now, let's say example, this is your plants, water plant. So you can take this as a water plant. You have seen the big plants, right? Or you can say this as a oil refinery. Initially what happened, the machines which is used to manage this water plant, doing this water plant and refining of the water and all that, it is done by the machines. But now these machines are basically controlled by the human. It is same like, when you go to airport, you seeing that, they're moving the stairs and all that. Manually human is using a machine to manage that. But now what happened, these all are controlled from one particular panel. That sensor is called as a PLC. Programmable logic control. You don't need to know this, but it is just for reference. And these PLCs receive the instruction from the system which is called DCS. An entire system of DCS is basically managed from one console that is basically called as a SCADA. This entire setup is called as a ICS. Now it is always a concern is if hacker hack into this plant and take control over the plant, it can be used against the client also. And today if you see the modern warfare between the two countries, they are actually targeting their OT plants. This is also called OT, operational technology. And another system is called as a ICS. So the question was specifically talking about what is the primary safeguard you need to address, and then you will give focus to the other things. What should be the primary thing when you're designing and you are in a design stage, you are not in an implementation stage. So let's go by the options. So option A, implementing a strict network segmentation between the ICS and corporate, and it is always a best practice. Okay, so your OT network or your ICS network should be always logically or physically isolated from your IT network, because 90% hacking, what happen is hacker basically hack into IT, and from the IT they basically hack into system. So the first important safeguard is there should be a clear segregation. Okay. Option B, establish your robust physical security control for critical ICS facility. That is basically your second priority. Okay. Which is actually true. That is also important. Third is enforce multi-factor authentication on all the engineering workstation. Definitely when you're connecting to the sensors and all that, you need a password. And deploy centralized patch management program for PLCs. PLC is a sensor. So let's go by the elimination. Let's consider all four options are best. Okay. Now, if you read the question carefully, the keyword is basically mentioned is primary. So when the word primary we use in that case, when we're talking about a focus one, it means without that, nothing will work. What is the primary objective for you to check this video? Gain the knowledge, okay, or pass the exam. Definitely by gaining knowledge you pass. Ultimately what is a primary? To pass the exam, right? So whenever the word primary is there, it means we're talking about the first order of importance. Is it clear? A sequence wise. Is it clear? Let's example, what is a primary way to manage the risk management? So from an auditor perspective, we need to talk about starting point. From auditor perspective, we talk about the, you can say, foundational element. Okay. So question say, what is a primary safeguard should be addressed before any other things? So network segmentation will become later because it's a technical one. Understood? It basically limit your lateral movement, because when I say the segmentation part here, Let's say example, this is your DMZ where you have a public facing systems. Then you have a IT, and then you need a OT here, OT network, which is your ICS network. So you want a clear logical segmentation. So by that, what happen is if any attacker hack the DMZ, we can able to stop the attack here. This is called limiting the lateral movement. Okay. But it's also depending upon the reliable uninterrupted operation of switches router, which is inside the secure area. What if someone physically get into the OT? What if the internal threat is there, right? So implementing network segmentation is secondary. So that is the reason we are eliminating this, because second is basically called establishing a robust physical security control, which makes sense. Okay, physical security is the topmost priority. So we have a components like PLCs, field devices. You know, if there is an internal threat is there, he can plug the malware and through which he can take control over that. So in that case, logical security is not sense. Is it clear? Even if you go by the ISACA standard or NIST standard, they give always importance to physical security. Third is multi-factor authentication. Multi-factor authentication, it is important for the remote engineering process, but it's useless if adversaries can plug directly into the control network or tamper with the unmanaged field devices. And centralized patch management is more from the finding a vulnerability in patch. So it does not make sense. So if you ask me the primary thing, without physical security, there's no point of having a logical security. If B is not there, the second best answer is A. And that's the reason answer is B for beta. Is it clear? Do let me know in the comment box that how do you find these justifications so that, you know, I can improve my video better. Let's move to the next coffee shot. Thank you. Okay. When auditing a high-risk industrial facility, IS auditor evaluate design consideration for the most critical IS components such as safety of PLCs, controlling hazardous process. Which of the following design feature is the most critical for an organization? Now this time the word was mentioned most. See, most mean a greater magnitude, okay? Or you can say the frequencies. So when we compare the option on a single dimension, okay, whenever the word talk about impact, influence, likelihood, we use, for example, what is the most important resource you have to use while preparing? Okay, primary objective is to clear, but what is the most important resource you have to use? Official manual, official material. So most mean which option has a highest impact. Okay, so that is basically the one we have. Is it clear? Let's say example, which control pose the most significant risk if missing from payment system. I'm just giving example here. Okay. So whenever we're talking about most mean highest impact. And here the question is most critical, and second critical words deal with availability. Okay. Now options are network segmentation of a control network from a corporate LAN. Okay. So definitely we need a segmentation to limit the lateral movement. Option is B is routine patch management for our PLCs. Definitely patch management, we need to patch and all that. Option C is basically end-to-end encryption for all control system traffic, which is more from a sensitivity point of view. And D is basically called redundancy of the controller, communication path and power supply. See, network segmentation, if you go by that, it minimizes the attack surface, but does not protect against the failure, hardware failure, single point outage, because question specifically talking about critical. Can you read the question? The question specifically talking about critical. Okay, a critical IS component. You have this OT plant. Hacker basically take control of the OT plant in such a way it make the user unavailable to handle that. Let's say example, you're driving a car. Now hacker take control of your car. So availability is a thing, right? So network segmentation is definitely, but during a design feature from a criticality point of view, availability is a first priority. So that is why we eliminate it. Option B is routine patch management for PLC. Actually, it reduces the vulnerability exposure, but it cannot prevent the immediate downtime, or you can say unsafe condition, which is caused by the hardware link failure and all that. Third is called as an end-to-end encryption. That is more from a sensitivity point of view, if you're protecting confidentiality, integrity, but it is opposite of the criticality. It impacts the latency. More data encrypted, take more time and all that. So it is less critical than continuous control and all that. So answer is basically D for delta. D for whatever. So D is basically I use redundancy of controller, communication path and power supply. So we need to make sure we have an independent power path, independent component. So if one component is down, we can use another one. Is it clear? And this is basically eliminate all the single point of failure and ensure your fail safe operations, maximum times and all that. That's the reason answer is D for delta. Okay, so let's move to the next coffee shot. Thank you. Another interesting question. Organization shares sensitive data assets with multiple third-party partners. The asset could be misused, resulting in illegal compliances and increased security risk from an improper handling by third party. Which of the following solution would best mitigate? Now this time the word has been used is best. See, best is basically we use in that case when we're talking about the particular choice, okay, which solve the problem and also fit within a practical limit. And best is talk about overall, overall choice under the real world constraints. Okay, so when you're evaluating any feasibility, when you're evaluating effectiveness, and we need to choose the option that deliver the greatest in terms for that particular requirement. So we use the word best. And from an auditor point of view, best we use to balance the risk impact, and looking for the temporary solution. Okay, official book is good. What is the best book? So it means we are looking for a temporary solution to fix the temporary issue. Is it clear? So this best we use in that case when we solve the problem well and fit within a limit of budget, timing and all that. Okay. So you can say we are eliminating the gold plated answer that are ideal but unrealistic, and we look for the cheap fixes that leave the major risk. So we look from that perspective. Okay. So here the question says that organization share sensitive data assets with multiple third-party partners, and these assets could be misused, resulting in a legal compliance and increased security risk from an improper handling by third party. Which of the following solution best mitigate this? So option A, data encryption, which is very true. It protects confidentiality by making data unreadable without key. But does it control legitimate authorized use? Does it control your authorized user who might misuse the data after decryption? Because they're saying share sensitive data sets with multiple third-party partners. So let's say example, this is your enterprise. So you're sharing a data with multiple partners. So data is already sharing. You have to make sure this asset could be misused. Okay, when you're sharing this data, what if this guy forward the document to someone and later on you are the one who accountable? One more example is you download some document which has your email ID. Now you forward the document to someone else. He'll decrypt, but he will forward to others. So data encryption is basically protect against unauthorized disclosure, but data is already shared here, right? So A is eliminated. DRM. Now what is DRM? Digital rights management. Let's say example here we have a DLP. DLP ensure whatever the data is going outside, DLP will block that. But by hook and crook, some data was able to bypass the DLP. Okay. The data is reside in these three systems. Now what I need, I want to remotely even control the data what I shared. Or today if you take an example of Netflix. So this is your Netflix. So as a user, you download a lot of content on your OTT platforms, right? But do you notice sometimes if you try to take a screenshot and all that, give you error. So data going everywhere, but still remotely they can able to manage that. Okay, so DRM is there, and DRM basically allow the organization to control exactly how the data need to be sent, where we are sending, and whom the data is accessed. And it also restrict your copying, forwarding, printing, and all that. Is it clear? Which makes sense. Option C, NDA. NDA is more like a outline. It do not actively prevent the unauthorized actions and all that. Okay, what if he took the data and later he says sorry, and we cannot able to challenge him. And D is basically called robust firewall implementation. It is more from a network security point of view. You're getting a point. It is more from a network security point of view. So from network security point of view, it does not make sense, right? Because it prevents the unauthorized external access. It does not control the authorized internal and external. So today, if I'm sharing any documents, I will add your email ID in that. I will define what kind of access you can have. When you're watching my videos, you will see your email ID there. So you will think twice before forwarding document. And if you forward tomorrow, I can able to track. So that is the reason answer is basically DRM, digital rights management. So wherever the data goes, remotely I can able to manage, remotely I can able to track, and I can able to check. Let's move to the next question. Another interesting question. Organization regularly publish proprietary visual content online. The IS auditor notes that users frequently reuse the content without permission and creating a risk that relate to the intellectual property infringement. Infringement means basically misuse. Which of the following would be the auditor best recommendation to prevent unauthorized reuse of visual content? So scope here is we need to give a thing that they should not be misused that. So option A, implement the robust copyright notice on web page. See, legal notice serve as a warning but does not provide any kind of a technical thing. Okay, no technical mechanism they can stop to reuse. So it can be easily ignored and does not actively deter any unauthorized reuse. So legal disclaimer only, not a technical prevention. So A removed. Option B, enforce digital watermarking, publish visual. Definitely. See, right now what happens, someone asked me for my videos. So what I did, I asked his email address, official email address, and I add that email address on his videos. So here it will start showing. So tomorrow, if he share my document somewhere else, and I got to know later, okay, oh, okay, I can see this email ID. So it means then I will check into my database to whom, for this email ID belong to whom. So I can easily send the legal notice. That is why, sometimes you download some journals and all that, your email ID was watermarked there. So I can able to track who shared this outside, which makes sense. It can clearly demonstrate your original ownership. It can deters I will think twice before I forward this document because my email ID is there. And it also proves that practical control that allow easy detection. Option C, employ strong encryption for image file. It is secure till it is encrypted. When you are in use, then encryption protect confidential during a transfer or storage, not in a use. So once decrypted, display image can be reused without restrictions, right? So it does not address the visual content reuse. And D is basically more like an administrative control, establish clear acceptable use policy on the website. It is just inform the user how to use the data and all that. Understood? So that's the reason answer is, yeah, go ahead. Answer is B for beta. Let's move to the next coffee shot. Thank you. Okay, next coffee shot. IS auditor notes that organization relies on manual DRM approach to protect digital content. Okay. This approach has proven inadequate in scalability and responsiveness to evolving business demand. Which of the following recommendation would be the best course of action? Auditor best course of action. So question document here is they want to use DRM, but as the demand is basically increased, they're able to scale up and all that. So how we can manage that? So options are, let me go by the options. Advise regular manual audit of DRM effectiveness. See, audit identify issues after the fact. It do not improve your scalability or adaptability. It is still rely on a manual process, which leaving the original scalability problem. So question here is what? The question is basically inadequate scalability responsiveness, which I need to improve. And again, if I go by the advising them regular manual audit and all that, doesn't solve that issue. Okay, and it is not my role as an auditor. I'm just creating a trouble for them. It does not make sense. Option B is basically called as propose a strict internal guideline for content sharing. Again, provide policy level control without technical scalability. It does not make sense. And it does not resolve the manual DRM inefficiencies. So policy control alone cannot do anything. No process can improve. Option C, suggests increasing the DRM related training for content managers. That makes sense. Enhancing staff knowledge, but still manual intensive, right? It does not address this cost scalability and all that. Option D is recommending automatic DRM manual process. Definitely, directly, this will address the issue. Automate the DRM, you can adapt quickly, effectively managing the growing content volume and all that. But one thing you need to understand is your content should be uniform. If your content is basically uniform, then only the automation is possible. And that is the reason answer is basically D. Is it clear? Answer is basically D for Delta. Let's go by the next coffee shot. Thank you. Okay. An IS auditor is concerned about data management practice involving sensitive intellectual property shared internally, externally. Okay, so they are concerned about sensitive data, okay, intellectual property data and all that. Which of the following combination of solutions should auditor recommend as a most effective to ensure data security and prevent unauthorized disclosure? Okay, it's a very good question. They want a solution for data security and they want to ensure that protection against unauthorized disclosure of the data. So options are digital certificate combined with antivirus. See, digital certificate combined with antivirus, digital certificate only confirm the identity. It does not prevent the internal misuse. On the other side, antivirus is actually used to prevent malware. It does not directly control or restrict the data usage. Here you need to understand the scope. What is the scope? They're looking for data security and they want to prevent the unauthorized disclosure. Option B, regular data backup combined with IDS, which makes sense. Backup is important, but backup ensure recovery and IDS detect the intrusion. Neither prevent internal unauthorized data disclosure or misuse proactively. So primary, corrective and detective. It does not secure data usage proactively. So that is removed. Strong authentication combined with firewall login makes sense because this is my system A and this is the firewall. Let's say example, if any user want to download the data, he need to first authenticate and then he can able to download. So by this way, the data will be accessible to authorized user, but authentication ensure valid user identity, but it does not prevent authorized user from misusing data. Okay, he authenticated, he accessed. What about he will forward the document. And firewall only block, it only block the things. Is it clear? It can only detect once incident occur. So it does not make sense. DRM with DLP is the most effective thing. How? Let me explain you. We have a system A, we have a system B. Here, what happened is on the border, we install the network-based data loss prevention. So there's a user, okay? And there's a firewall also. Let's take an example. By hook, so user know very well, this hacker knows very well, I cannot able to initiate any connection from outside to inside because firewall will block that. So he sent a phishing email. User click on the phishing email and it basically generate a reverse connection. And now what happened through that connection, there is a possibility he can send the data. Now there is a DLP there. DLP was unable to block. So DLP is basically failed. Okay, because DLP monitor what kind of a data is going. But now let's take example, NDLP unable to detect. Now data downloaded in the system, but thankfully the data has a DRM. So remotely I can able to delete the data. Remotely I can corrupt the data. So DRM work with DLP as a compensating. So DRM control who can access, how they use the content, including copying, forwarding, and DLP on the other side monitor the data movement, which proactively prevent the leakage. So both are directly address the data usage and disclosure concerns. So that's the reason answer is basically, we can go for the D for Delta. Okay, D for Delta. Let's go with the next coffee shot. Thank you. Another interesting question. Logical access controls are implemented within the organization to enforce management policies and protect sensitive information asset. Fine. From a IS auditor viewpoint, these logical access control should primarily be designed to. So we have a different type of control. We have administrative control, which create a process. We have physical control, which talk about physical functions. And logical is basically the technical we have. Okay. So we have a 4 option. Reduce risk to a level acceptable to the organization. Option B, eliminate all unauthorized access attempt. Option C, reduce risk to the lowest possible level and minimize the effort required for the user access. Now question say that from an IS auditor viewpoint, these logical access control primary designed to what? Primary mean first. Reduce risk to a level accept to the organization, which makes sense. Is it clear? Because we have a risk appetite guideline. Option B, eliminate all unauthorized access attempts. See, it is ideal, but it's unrealistic. As a, there's no control can fully eliminate every unauthorized attempt. And auditor understanding is that risk elimination is rarely achievable. So residual risk is always there, right? So we are eliminating because it's an unrealistic and it is an unachievable goal. Option C, reduce risk to a lowest possible level. Now, lowest can be anything. It's very super close. See, reducing risk is a good practice, but may lead to the excessive control, increased cost, and complexities there beyond the organization acceptance. And what is that lowest? We are not clear about that. The lowest is what? Acceptable or not acceptable, that we need to identify. And option D is minimize the effort required for user access. Actually, it addresses the convenience rather than security. It does not align directly with the logical access control objective. So it is an operational convenience, which is a secondary to the security effectiveness. Understood? So that's the reason answer is A for alpha. Reduce risk to a level acceptable to the organization. Let's move to the next coffee shot. Thank you. Another tricky question. To effectively evaluate logical access control, we're talking logical access control within the organization. Which of the following actions should IS auditor perform first? Whenever the word first is there, it means we're talking about question talking about sequence. Whenever the word most is there, we're talking about outcome. Whenever the first is the primary is there, we're talking about the primary outcome. But when the question has a word first, it means we're talking about sequence. Okay. Now here, they want to understand what is the first thing when you evaluate the logical access control. What is the logical access control you need in your organization? Okay. So options are identify applicable regulatory requirement standard, which makes sense. Gain the technical and organizational understanding of IT, which is true. Review the document logical access policies, true. Conduct the little test of logical access control effectiveness, that is true. See, directly we are eliminating in C and D. The reason why we're still in a stage of finalizing a control. Okay, but we'll go by the process. So option A is identify applicable regulatory requirement standard. Definitely required. It is important for the context, but secondary to understand the environment itself. Is it clear? So without initial understanding, applying standard is a premature. Okay, the reason of eliminating this, it is a necessary later, but not a first. Option B, gain the technical and organizational understanding of IT. We need to know what is a business. So essential point for auditor is to first understand technology, system, user, data, business, context. and it is clearly aligned with the standard of audit planning and methodology, and it is a foundation step. Option C, review the documented logical access policy procedure. Definitely it's part of a gap assessment, but reviewing the documentation without context or environmental understanding is less effective. The reason we are eliminating is it's a next step we follow after understanding the IT environment. Option D, detailed test. Definitely tests occur only after the auditor clearly understands the environment, right, and has reviewed the documentation. We are eliminating this because later in the audit cycle, after gaining required adequate understanding, reviewing the documentation. But right now, we will not go for that. So reason of going for the answer is basically B, because fundamental step defined by the ISACA audit standard is understand the requirement first, due diligence. C is basically good if the question say most from the documentation point of view, but documentation alone without formal understanding is nothing, and that's the reason answer is B for beta. Let's move to the next coffee shot. Thank you. As auditor begin assessing the logical access control by gaining a technical and organizational understanding of the IT environment, what is the auditor primary purpose for obtaining the initial understanding? Question talking about primary, it means first, purpose of what? Obtain the initial understanding. Why they need to understand that? It's a very good question. So to accurately identify risk warranting audit attentions in current and future planning, which is true. Option B, validate adherence to internal logical access policies and procedure. That is also true. Design the detailed technical testing. That is also true. And option D is determine compliance with applicable regulatory standard and requirement. So first, to accurately identify risk warranting audit attention in a current and future planning. See, this is directly aligned with the standard. Okay, so this concept is basically called as a risk-based auditing. Okay, let me write down here. This concept is called as a risk-based auditing. See, when you're dealing with multiple processes, it is not possible for you to audit all the thing on the same time. So you do risk-based auditing. You identify which process has a high risk and we give priority to that. Is it clear? And this initial understanding inform your audit scope. Okay. It gives you the idea about the audit scope. Second is we talk about the timings, how soon we can complete. It helps you to prioritize. Okay, and more important, you can basically map with the organization context. Okay, so right now the answer is basically A as per me, because we can able to give proper attention to the high critical process. Option B is to validate adherence to the internal logical access policies and procedure. See, it is important, but validation occur after the initial risk identification planning. So require policy to be clearly assess and clearly understand the environment context. It is super close, but second step, it will be due after risk assessment. Option C, design detailed technical testing for logical access effectiveness. Again, these steps, okay, you can plan it, after the risk is basically identify and prioritize. So technical testing without prior environment understanding can be critical task, and it will be too detailed and premature at this stage. Option D, determine the compliance with applicable regulatory standard and requirement. This will come after A. Okay, regulatory compliance assessment depending upon the clear understanding of the environment and risk context first. And compliance assessment is a part of an audit objective, but secondary to establish the risk-based priorities. So this is something come to the place when we finalize the process. Like this process we need to assess, and then we identify the compliance requirement in that. So in this case, answer is basically we'll go for the A for alpha. Yeah, A for alpha. Okay, so let's go with the next coffee shot. Thank you. Quick question. During an access control review, IS auditor discovered that several technicians share the same privileged login ID and password. I think this is the problem statement. When administrating a network device, okay, which of the following is a primary risk of this practice? Risk mean this is the thing they identify same privileged login ID has been used. That's a threat. And the same privilege has been used and they're administrating network device. So what is the outcome of this threat? What will lead to the risk? Option A, password complexity requirement may be bypassed. Okay, but how it can be a risk? It's a conveniency, right? Option B, accountability for all action performed under the account cannot be enforced, which is true. It is difficult to track. Let's say example, we have a user 1, we have a user 2, user 3, and we have a system A. All are login with the same password. It's difficult to track who access, when access. So if you have a unique credentials, we can able to trace each action. That's why when you're connecting the Wi-Fi in the house, you share the same password, but same Wi-Fi you try to access in the hotels and all that, every room has a unique username password we can able to track. By sharing a password, we're destroying the individual accountability, and it also lead to the audit trail challenge. Option C, schedule password rotation process become more difficult to manage. It is super close. Rotation is harder but remain feasible. The impact is operational, not the form of security risk. D, shared credential are most likely to violate the minimum length policy. Definitely length can still meet the policy regardless of sharing. This is a secondary compliance matter. So all four are risk, but the biggest risk is basically accountability, because rest can be addressable. Biggest concern is sharing a same ID can lead to the accountability issue. And that's the reason answer is B for beta. Let's go by the next question. Thank you. While reviewing the user awareness control, the IS auditor must confirm the employee formally acknowledge a specific constraint, responsibility associated with using an organization information system and network resources. Which document should the auditor verify first to meet the objective? Again, the question document sequence. Option A, enterprise information security policy. See, enterprise information security is a very high level security objective. And here the auditor, what he want to confirm employees are formally acknowledge the constraints, their responsibilities towards, okay. Data classification guideline is specific to data. It focus on labeling, handling, how to classify data. It doesn't talk about day-to-day user behavior. Acceptable use policy makes sense because it basically explicitly talk about employees, their do and don'ts and all that. Access control policy is more about access function. And that is the reason answer is basically C for Charlie. This is all from my side. First series of coffee shots in 2025 on CISA. Do let me know how do you find, and how do you find this from others videos, what you have seen in the past. Shall I continue this practice and bring more videos on domain 5 and domain 4? And what is the best thing you like about this video? It will be great to share the feedback, and do share in network if you find this useful. Thank you so much. And without you, I'm nothing. I'm working on the second part only based on the feedback. So based on the feedback, I'll try to improve the content. And do let me know how this video is helping you to clear your certification in a first attempt. Thank you so much. And if you're new to the channel, do subscribe to the channel and click on the bell icon to make sure you should not miss my future videos on a similar topic. Good day. Bye.